Hello and welcome. Today I'm going to be playing a song for you called Stairway to the Stars. It was written by Matty, Malneck, and Frank Signorelli. And I heard it played last night in a film by Billy Wilder called Some Like It Hot, starring Marilyn Monroe. And Tony Curtis and Jack Lemmon are in the film. They're a couple of musicians in need of a gig, so they pose as women in drag and they get a job on the road with an all-girl band. It was pretty funny. Anyway, I heard the song and I said, what is that song? And then I remembered it was Stairway to the Stars. And I really like this song, so I'm going to play it for you now, Hollywood version, also with a solo, a jazz solo in the middle. And then later on, I'm going to talk about some of the techniques I'm using. So now here we go with Stairway to the Stars. I want to talk a little bit about some of the techniques I'm using, and actually a lot of the techniques that I'm playing in this particular video are from past videos I've done. In other words, I've gone into more detail on past videos than I will on this one, because this is just a sort of an accumulation of other techniques that I have covered. But basically I'm using a spread voicing, and all my arrangements are my own arrangements. I don't use anyone else's. I either write my arrangement out or I ad-lib it. In this particular case, I just ad-lib the arrangement. In other words, I have a concept of how I want to do it, and I'm just using a basic lead sheet. Now, the basic lead sheet just has a melody line and the chords, and sometimes it'll have the vocal line in there. But if you want to get better at that, you want to read transcriptions and then begin to try to convert over to lead sheets by studying a lot of the techniques that I'm talking about and applying them to now a lead sheet form. So once you learn your chords and your runs and you learn your scales and so on, you'll be able to do that, hopefully. So I'm starting out with spread voicings, which means I'm just spreading the harmonies out rather than playing like tight chords like these rootless voicings in the left hand. I'm spreading all the harmonies out between the two hands. So I'm having full sounding chords like this. So there you see, I play a tenth. If you have a problem with tenths, just you can roll them like that, or arpeggiate the notes, but hold the bottom one. Usually with the pedal, even if I come off it like that, I can hold it with the pedal. I use the pedal a lot, actually. It gives you a smoother, more legato sound. But you have to use it carefully because you don't want the sounds, two chords, to bleed into each other. But you want to, you know, when it's one chord through the measure, that kind of thing, you can hold it. There's the pedal is down. Now I release it quickly for the next note. It gives me a smooth transition there. Now this is an approach chord to the F major. So I do that kind of thing a lot. Particularly with minor chords, if I'm approaching a minor chord, I'll often use a diminished chord a half step below, like that, you know. Like I'll show you an example of that. There's an approach chord from above. It's just, that's an F sharp dominant seventh approaching an F major 7. Now here's that approach to the minor chord. That little thing actually took me a long time to figure that out, but it's a diminished chord really, but it approaches from a half step below the minor 7 chord to the A. So this is A flat diminished to A minor. Now that kind of a chord there, see, that's just building your thirds. Root 3rd, 5th, 7th, 9th, 11th. So it's an 11th chord. It sounds really nice because they're stacked thirds. I always put, when there's no melody, I always put some kind of a fill. So there's a lot to do with knowing your chord and being able to play it either as a chord or broken and arpeggiate the chord. And then go to the next chord smoothly through approach tones, like that's an approach tone to that note, and then maybe like that. So I use a lot of chromatic approaches. That's another example there. Now in the bridge, the second part of the second A, I just elaborate a little bit on and put some fills in. Now in the bridge, I'm doing, well, the first time I played it in spread voicing. Then later on, I played a locked hand technique here, like that. Now that is, I've had a previous video on that. I'm just doubling the melody note in the left hand and then filling the chord out in the right hand. So that's how that sounds. It's a pretty nice sound. I'm going to talk a little bit now about the solo. Actually, I had a subscriber ask me about how do you solo when it's create an automatic, be able to do it spontaneously, and that's a really tough question. I think it helps to have a certain inherent ability to hear melodies in your head and then be able to translate them to the keyboard, first slowly and then speed them up gradually. You know, improvisation is not an easy thing. One thing I suggested is writing out your own solo slowly and methodically, and then master playing it at different tempos. Another thing is to practice a lot of bebop tunes because they actually sound and read like solos, like improvisation. And if you get really good at them and the technique begins to sink in, then you can, I think, you become more spontaneous at being able to pick out ideas on your own. It's also very important to play scales and arpeggios and get very good at them. You know, at any rate, you know, when I'm looking at a song and I want to improvise on it, and this one is sort of slow. It's a medium slow tempo, so it's easy to play like maybe a double time feel against it. So I'm using a lot of the things that I do with my knowledge of the chord, you know, scales that fit the chord and the arpeggios that fit the chord. So when I'm on a G minor, like the second chord of the measures of G minor, it goes C, then it goes to G minor 11, and this is a 2-5-1 into F there. So it's a 2-5-1 into the 4 chord. So now I can think, a lot of people, musicians and teachers, advise you to learn to play on 2-5-1 progressions, and I have a video, a previous video I did on the 2-5-1s and how to practice a very simple exercise that's easy for either a beginning improviser or intermediate, even advanced people can learn a lot from this. And you can get the Jamie Aebersold records that have an accompaniment for the 2-5-1, or there's other programs that have where you can practice 2-5-1s with an accompanying rhythm section. And the pianist can, of course, just use the bass and drum part. But I'm using my knowledge of the arpeggios and the scales and also the target tone. So I'm that kind of thing. And I think you have to practice this slowly and very deliberately at first. And then gradually, as you pick up the tempo and start to feel time, the feeling of the tempo, you begin to fit those ideas into a tempo. Now, one of the things that I tell students is you always have to know where 1 is. You have to be feeling 1, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. I always have to be thinking about where the 1 is. And then you can begin a phrase anywhere you like. You can begin it on any beat. It can be on a pickup, like two-note pickup to the 1, like that, or it can be a 1-note pickup, or right on 1, or like after 1, 1, 1, 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, you know, and 2, and 3. So you might want to practice little phrases, write them out, whatever, with it starting on different beats and upbeats. But again now, that lick there, I'm going actually to an augmented 5th of the chord. So G minor 7, like that. So now if I use that as the target tone, I have to be aware of the voicing in the right hand. It doesn't clash with the left hand voicing. I mean, you're like, that's not gonna sound good. So I want to adjust the voice. Sorry, I got rudely interrupted by my card running out of space, so I had to do a little cleaning out. But anyway, I was talking about the approach to a augmented 5th, that the left hand voicing has to fit so that it sounds correct. And actually I'm using a particular scale there, and it really helps to know certain exotic scales: half tone, whole tone, diminished scales, pentatonic. This one's a superlocrian. Now a superlocrian has whole steps and then half, whole, half. So there's a half, whole, half, like an altered dominant or diminished scale there, and then the rest of it is whole step. And the interesting thing about it is that it really hooks up nicely with the augmented 5th and the flat 9 and the sharp 9 and the flat 9. So augmented 5th, sharp 9, flat 9. So that's sort of an altered dominant chord there on the C7 resolving. Now, you see now there's a chromatic approach 2 steps below a target tone. How do you get it to come out in the right place? Well, you don't always. I think it just takes a lot of practice and eventually you get better at it, at coming out. I don't always come out. I hit bad notes. I don't always get it right, but you know, like I said, the feeling of the 1, knowing where you are in the measure. Start by learning to play licks out of tempo, and then begin to start to put them in the tempo. Now I'm beating this with my foot, or you can use a metronome. See, the 1. So you want to feel the beat. I always recommend using the metronome on 2 and 4. I'll demonstrate a little bit of that for you. Okay, so I'm going to just set up the metronome here so it's clicking. Now this is clicking on every beat. It's a quarter note because this is a ballad type of thing, but you can actually set the metronome, some metronomes, so that the 1 clicks with a different sound or beeps or does something different. I don't have that, but I'm always feeling the 1. It's the most important beat of the measure. So now I'm doubling. Now I can be doubling in the right hand and it's still staying, the meter's the same. But if I were to actually do this in double time, it would probably sound like something like this. Now I'm going to put it on 2 and 4. That was on the beat. Like that. See, so now I'm feeling the 2 and 4 is what the metronome is doing for me, and it's keeping it, it's helping it to swing more than if it were on 1 or if it were on every beat, because the 2 and 4 is what the drummer would play the hi-hat, or the backbeat would be the 2 and the 4. So that's how you use it on the 2 and 4. And for a ballad or a slower tune, then it isn't so practical, but definitely for medium tempo jazz swing, the metronome can be very helpful to play along with it to keep your time steady, so you don't rush, so you don't drag. Okay, so I'm going to wrap this up now. I'll talk more about improvisation later on in another video. But we'll go to just to the last part of the song and show you what I did there for a minute. Last part of the song, I'm taking it up an octave and I'm spreading out the harmony, and I'm also playing a little bit of stride in there, I think. So you have this. That's it. You want to get a lot of sound. You want low notes for the stride, and then big chords up here. Big full chords. Fill out the harmony as much as possible. Like that. And so on. Okay, so that's about it for this one. I hope you enjoyed it. I really appreciate getting comments or a thumbs up. So help me out. That keeps me going. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time around.